Hello, this is Justin at the Tech Train here, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you a resource that I use quite a lot in my classes at school. It's a really good starter activity and plenary as well, and it helps to encourage analytical thinking and the way in which it encourages students to make connections between otherwise different topics or ideas. I'll show you the resource itself. You can see how it would be used. So this is in PowerPoint, as you can see. The version I'm going to show you is the hardware edition. So this is using ideas from the topic of computer hardware, but this can be applied to not only any topic but pretty much any subject that you like. And I'll even show you a resource a little later which has nothing to do with any specific subject at all. So here's the PowerPoint. Yes, I like my cheesy music, I like my cheesy intros, but it gets the class started. Now, once I have got the intro up, I'm going to click on the background. You'll see my mouse pointer as a little hand. It's the whole background is a link. So I'm going to click on the background, and what's going to happen is it's going to randomly choose 3 images from a bank of images to do with this topic of hardware, as you can see. So let's have a look. It has chosen 3 random images. I have a bank of I don't know, about 20 images, I think it is here. And so we've got memory, processor and printer, and the challenge for the students is to spot the odd one out. Now, of course, I don't necessarily tell the students that this is totally random. So the students believe that I have deliberately chosen 3 items and one of them is the odd one out. And so it's up to the students to not only identify which one they would decide is the wrong one out, or the odd one out rather, but why. In this case, you could argue all 3, of course, but perhaps the most obvious would be printer, because the printer is external hardware, whereas these 2 are internal hardware. But it is totally random. Once they've decided on the odd one out and they've justified it, possibly students within the class have different views, and you can start getting a bit of a debate, a bit of a discussion going on. Click the background, click anywhere, and it chooses 3 new random ones. We've got memory back again, but you know, with a bank of 20 you're going to get some repeats. But it does always make sure that when you have your 3 images, they're all different. So you'll never have memory in 2 positions here. There'll always be 3 different images. So memory, keyboard, hard disk, again you can decide which one you think would be the odd one out and why. And we'll do one more. So again, memory is obviously popular today, but again, you see 3 separate images there. So it's a really good little utility. Just pull out for a quick 3-4 minutes here or there, just to get the students engaged, thinking about the different parts. And of course, you can extend this not just for one topic, but across multiple topics, helping to encourage students to make connections between ideas, concepts, keywords that otherwise don't have any obvious connection between them. So as I say, it's a really good tool for analytical thinking, for argument, for making connections between topics. And I'm going to show you how to make this tutorial, how to make this resource from scratch. Going to show you the whole thing. I'm going to show you a couple of different versions and alternatives as well. And I'm also going to show you how you can download not only this file that you're seeing me use here, but all of the other files which I'll show you as well. So I'm going to introduce a new thing that I'm doing here on this channel today, where you will be able to download any of the resources that you see me use in the video. So let's get started. So I've pulled apart the version of the file that I showed you just now. I've removed all of the code. Yes, there is a little bit of code in it, but if you've never done coding before, don't worry, it's quite straightforward. I'll explain everything as I go along and show you how to do that, so it will be quite straightforward. I've pulled 1 or 2 other things out as well, so really all I have now is this first slide with just my title on and a little bit of a hanging thing here. The only thing I've done here is create a little rectangle, then drawn 2 lines, small circle with no fill, and then group that all together. And then I can edit that, so I can change it from hardware edition to demo edition or whatever it might be. And I have added a little animation to this as well. So if we go into the animation panel, you'll see that this one, all the other animations are for changing colours of the O's and for the music. But for this one, it's just simply a little tilt animation there. So that one, it just allows it to tilt or rock slightly as the thing drops down. But this, you don't have to do any of that, of course. That's just simply my sort of cheese there. And as I say, if you want to download this file here, the completed file, then you're very welcome to do so. And as I say, I'll explain a little later on in the video exactly how you can do that. I'm not going to put the download link to this in the description, so you will need to keep watching to find out how to download this file. But you can make your own, as I say, and that can be quite fun and a learning experience as well. So that's your first slide. The second slide, what you want to do is have 3 rectangles. They're just simply plain rectangles. So going into insert shapes and drawing a rectangle, do one of them, of course, and then duplicate it. And then underneath this, again, simply text boxes. Nothing fancy there, just got to draw a text box. And once you've done one and you've increased the font size, then you can just duplicate that across. Now, once you've put your shapes on there and your text boxes, you will need to name them, because the code that we're going to write in a bit will need to know which of these shapes it's putting a picture into and which of these 3 text boxes it's putting some text into. So how do you name a shape? Well, you'll need to come up to the top of the screen where it says Home, click on the Home tab, and then on the right hand side it has this little select arrow. If you click on that, you can then open the selection pane, and that opens this panel on the right, and this is where you can name text boxes or shapes or images. Excuse me. So if I click on this first shape here, you'll see that is selected. It's got a little orange highlight on it, and I can then just simply click on that. Excuse me, I have a bit of a croaky throat at the moment. Click on that, and then you can type in whatever name you want. Now, I've named these 3 shapes Big Pick 1, Big Pick 2, and Big Pick 3. And then my text boxes, I've named these Big Text 1, Big Text 2, and Big Text 3. So that's just simply a naming convention I've used for the purpose of this. You don't have to use that. But of course, if you're copying my code, or you're following along with my code, then that will be more useful if you keep the same names as I am. So those are my Pick 1, 2, and 3, Text 1, 2, and 3. And the remainder of this presentation is just simply an image that I have got from the internet. I've used royalty-free images, so either go on to Creative Commons CC search, or if you're going to go to Google Images, then you can search for images which have a license for reuse. So I do always use that. So all these images are Creative Commons license, so we're able to use these and edit them. So I've simply got a picture here, and I've named the rectangle pick and the text underneath text. Now, once I've created one of these slides and I've named the shape pick and the text text, and I've formatted it how I want it to be, all I've then done is duplicate that, and then on each duplicated slide changing obviously the picture and the text. And the beauty of the way we're going to code this is that it doesn't matter how many slides you have, you won't need to change your code. And if later on you decide you want to add another image or another couple of images to this, then you simply duplicate the slide. So I'm clicking on this last one, press Ctrl D to duplicate it, and then I can change this picture to whatever I like, change that text to whatever I like, and that will automatically be included by the code, so that has a chance of appearing in the game. So it's something which, once you've created, is very, very simple to extend or adapt or change. And of course, once you've created one version of this, like this hardware version or demo version, If later on you want to create a totally different version, all you've got to do is delete all the slides after the first one that has the big picture and text on, delete everything else, and then change the text in this one and duplicate this slide. It doesn't really matter what you've got on each slide, the code will just look at all the slides after slide 2 and randomly pick 3 of them. So that's the setup. So basic title, your 3 squares, and then as many or as few of these slides as you want with the images and text on. So once you've got that set up, the next thing to do is to start adding some code. Now, in order to add code, you'll need to go to the Developer tab, and chances are, if you're already a subscriber to my channel and you've done PowerPoint, you've almost certainly got the Developer tab up by now. But if for some bizarre reason you've not subscribed or you've not seen some of my videos before which use a little bit of code, then this is how to get that tab. It's very easy. Just simply open up any tab you like, find a blank area of the ribbon, right click on it and choose Customize the Ribbon. And when you do that, you'll have this window, and on the right hand side are all the possible tabs that you could have, and you'll see that Developer is just there, and you see my one is ticked. If you don't have the Developer tab, then that will be blank. So simply put a tick next to Developer and click OK. Now then you will have the Developer tab. So the Developer tab, once we've clicked on that, has this button on the left hand side called Visual Basic. That's the programming language that we're going to use. So we're going to click on that, and that opens up this window here. Nothing much in it at the moment. We need to create a document for us to put our code in, and we'll do that by coming over to the left hand side where we have VBA project, and then we're going to right click on it, choose Insert, and then Module. And that now gives us a place where we can start writing the code that we need. So what code do we need then? We'll need in total 4 blocks of code. One of the blocks of code will run every single time we change to a different slide. One will put a pause in. You'll see that when I was running my game earlier, whenever I generated 3 new images, the images appeared slowly. So there's one image, then a pause, then the second image and a pause. And although that's not strictly speaking necessary, I like it as a touch. It makes a little more drama. It gets the students already guessing by the first picture, you know, I wonder how it could compare to the second picture. So it just helps a little bit, I think, to add a bit of drama to it. And the third block, is going to start off the whole presentation. So when we're at the title slide, we're going to click on the background and begin the game. And the fourth block of code is our biggest block of code. That's going to have all the random numbers, making sure that those 3 random numbers are different to each other, and making sure that the images are pulled from these slides and put into that slide. So let's get started then with the first block of code. So inside my module, what I'm going to do is write a subroutine here, or block of code, which will be triggered every time we change to a new slide. So I'm going to call this sub. That's what we call a block of code in coding, so sub. And this is an actual name which PowerPoint will recognize. On slide show, page change, press enter. So if you write it exactly like that, then every time you do change from one slide to another, this will trigger. And what we're going to do now is, if we have a look back at these, we're going to make each of these black squares go black after it's had a picture on it. You'll notice that when I generate 3 new pictures, I can't run it now because there's no code in this one, but whenever I generate a new image, the 3 existing images are removed from these rectangles and they all turn black. Now, how do they know to turn black? Well, they know to turn black because hidden behind the middle one, there is a 4th black rectangle. And it's this black rectangle here which contains the appearance which is going to be copied onto these 3 large squares here. Now you'll see on the right hand side that one is called black. I can pull that out here. So this is the template which will be used to reset each of these images. So once your 3 pictures have gone, what do you want to be displayed in these 3 pictures? You could have a black blank area like I have. Or you could have your school or college logo. Or your face. It really doesn't matter. The thing to do is to make sure you copy one of these images, make it appear how you want these pictures to appear when they aren't containing an image, and then you want to just make sure that you name that black, as I have here. Of course you can rename it something else if you want to, but you'll just have to make sure that when you're writing your code you change the name in the code as well. So if you want to just stick with black for the moment and then think about changing it later. And then I've just made mine a little bit smaller and I've right clicked on it and send to back so that I can put that behind one of these squares here so it's not visible. So now that we've got a secret hidden picture that is called black, I can copy the appearance of that and put it onto the other shapes. So how do you copy the appearance of a shape and apply that appearance to another shape? Well, what I'm going to do is write active presentation, and this is all happening on slide 2, so we write slides 2, and we're working with shapes, so it's dot shapes, and now we need to say which shape is it. Well, we've named it black, that's the little small one with a template. So I've got to, write black, and then I'm going to pick up the style of that shape. So in a way I've kind of copied the style. If you're familiar with the format painter, basically that's what we're doing. We're copying the format of one shape and applying it to another. So we've copied the style of the black square. So now what we're going to do is apply that to each of the big pictures. Remember, these 3 squares here are called Big Pic 1, Big Pic 2 and Big Pic 3. So to do that, I'm going to write active presentation. Still working on slide 2, still working with shapes, but this time it's the Big Pic 1 that we're working with, and we're not picking up the style, we're applying the style that we've already copied. So now we are copying that style from black and applying it to the Big Pic 1. Now once you've done that, we can then copy this line of code, and I'm going to paste that 2 more times so we can change that to Big Pic 2 and Big Pic 3. So we've copied the style from the black square and applied it to the 3 big squares. Now underneath those 3 big squares we have these text boxes, of course. We need to make sure that those are blank as well. So we're going to write active presentation, got slides 2, of course you can copy and paste that if you want, I'm just writing it out just so that you can see this a little more clearly. We're still working with shapes, even though it's a text box, we'll use shapes. And we called this big text 1, big text 1. But it's not the style of it, it's the text frame that it contains, and it's the text range and dot text. That's how we get into the actual text part of the text box. And what does the text equal? Well, nothing. So it equals speech mark, which means blank. Again, once we've written that line of code out, we can copy that 2 more times as well and just change that from big text 1 to big text 2 and big text 3. And that's it. We've written our first subroutine, or our first block of code. So when we run that, or if we were to run that, what would happen is that every time we change from one slide to another, or we revisit slide 2, each of these squares here, whatever they display, they could display anything at all. We could even color them right now with something different. So every time we change from one slide to another, that color will appear the same as whatever that one looks like there. Okay, So now that we've got the first block of code, let's go on to the second block of code. So our next block of code is going to be what chooses the random numbers and then uses those random numbers to select the pictures from whatever slides there are later on in our presentation and pushes them into these three squares. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write sub again. So that's the way we start any block of code in coding, so sub, the subroutine. And I'm just going to call this change pick. When I press enter, you'll see that again it puts these empty brackets just after the name and puts end sub at the bottom. Don't get rid of the brackets, don't get rid of the end sub. I'm just going to make a little bit of space between them so that we can see this code nice and clearly. So what is the first thing we're going to do? Well, the first thing we want to do is to find out how many slides there are in our presentation. Because as I said earlier, the way that this has been coded is that it doesn't matter how many pictures you've got. That's not included in the code. Which means that once you've produced the resource, if you want to add more pictures, you can do very easily. You might want to start off with just the pictures for topic 1, but then when you've covered topic 2, add those slides in as well, and then keep on adding more slides in the more topics that you cover. So by working out in our code how many slides we currently have, we can then work out what the random number should be. So here, for example, I have 22 slides. So that means that I'm going to be looking at slides 3 to 22. So I want a random number between 3 and 22. And that will then allow me to pick whichever one of these images it will be. But if I had 50 slides, then I would want to be able to go from a random number between 3 and 50. So by knowing how many slides there are on the presentation, we can then choose our random number accurately. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, we're going to create a variable, and to do that we write the word dim, and I'm going to call this variable last slide. A variable is just simply a label, if you like, for a particular bit of information. So dim last slide, and this is going to be a whole number, so I'll call it an integer, just so the computer knows what kind of information is going to go in that little labelled box, if you like. And then what is last slide going to equal? Well, last slide is going to equal my active presentation dot slides dot count. So that's simply the count of how many slides I currently have. So the little box, if you like, called last slide now contains, in my case here, the number 22. But if you change it, as I say, that will change. Now we need 3 new random numbers, so I'm going to use dim, and these are going to be the 3 random numbers. So we know we want a random number between 3 and, let's say, 22, but I want a second random number for the second picture, and a third random number for the third picture. And of course, if you want to just have excuse me, 2 images, or you want 4 images or 5 images, well then you can do that quite easily. I'm doing 3, so I want 3 random numbers, and I'm going to choose these as random pick 1, random pick 2, and random pick 3. So if you wanted more, as I say, just simply add a 4th one or a 5th one or whatever. So now what are these random numbers going to equal? Excuse me. Well, the first number, random pick 1, is reasonably easy actually. So random pick 1, random pick 1, do check the spelling of your variables. Random pick 1 is going to equal a whole number, so it's equals int for integer, and then going to open up 2 brackets, and it's going to be the number that we're storing in last slide. So in my case it would be 22 at the moment, I think it was. Then that's going to be minus, and then in brackets I'm going to write this out as 3 minus 1. I'll explain why in a second. Close my double bracket, and then do a little asterisk, which is our multiplication sign, and RND is a code word for random. Close my last bracket, and then add 3. Now I've written it out in a reasonably complicated way, I guess. I'm not going to explain all of it, but just let me just explain parts of it. So last slide we know is the variable that contains the number of slides. This 3 here and here tells us what the minimum number should be. Now in my case, the first random picture is on slide 3, which is why I've got that 3 in there. But if you're embedding this inside another PowerPoint presentation, say, or you want to have an extra slide in here that explains the rules of it, if you want the first slide to contain your lesson objectives or whatever it might be, then it could be that the first random picture, like this one in this case, isn't on slide 3, it's on slide 5, for example. So in that case, what you would need to do is to change these two 3s here to 5s. So I've written it out in that way so that you can very easily change what the minimum number is. So we know it's going to be between 3 and 22 in this case. And it will always choose a whole number because we don't want to have to go to slide 7.639. So we've got random pick 1, that's easy. But what about random pick 2? We can't do the same line. If we just did that and changed that to random pick 2, that potentially would cause us a problem. And here's why. I'll tell you. Because random pick 1 is going to be a random number between 3 and 22. Let's say 17. This line of code here says the same thing. Pick a random number between 3 and 22. And there's nothing to stop it choosing 17 again. Which means if we have both of them as 17, then we're going to end up with 2 sticks of memory, which in some cases would be useful, but not when we want 3 separate images, 3 images which are unique. We want 3 different images. So we can't have code that just simply chooses a random number. We need something that makes sure that whatever the random pick 2 number is, it is different to random pick 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is change random pick 2 and make that equal 0, which it can't obviously equal. That's not a number between 3 and 22. So I've just set random pick 2 to a number which would not be acceptable. And I'm now going to create a do until loop. So this is something where it's going to keep on doing this next line of code until something is the case. So we're going to keep on doing this until the number of random pick 2 does not equal 0 and the number in random pick 2, random, can't spell, random pick 2 does not equal the number in random pick 1. I really cannot spell today. Random pick 1. There we go. So it's going to keep on repeating this code, do until this random number here isn't 0, which it obviously is now, so we know it is definitely going to have to go through this code at least once. And it's also not going to be equal to whatever number is random pick 1. This less than greater than symbol here is what we use to mean not equal to. So what are we going to do? Well, obviously what we need to do now is choose a random number. So we can copy that first line of code, put it in here and change that to random pick 2. So now random pick 2 is going to be a random number. Now we know that can't possibly be 0, but what if it's the same as random pick 1? Well, our code is simply going to repeat. Do until random pick 2 doesn't equal random pick 1. So it's going to keep on picking a random number until we've got 2 unique numbers. So once we've done that, what we can do is tell the computer, right, that's the end of our little loop. So this is where the loop starts. This word loop here means that's where the loop ends. So it's going to be keep on going through that loop there until we definitely have random pick 2 as a number which is different to random pick 1. And you can probably see that for random pick 3 we're going to have to do pretty much the same thing. So random pick 3, I'm going to start it off as 0, which we know is not acceptable, so we are definitely going to have the loop repeat at least once. We're then going to say do until random pick 3 doesn't equal 0 and random pick 3 doesn't equal random pick 1, but also and random pick 3 doesn't equal random pick 2. So we have random pick 3, which has got to be different to both random pick 1 and 2. So that means random pick 3 is now a completely random number. So it'll keep on looping until it's not a 0, it's not the same as number 1, and it's not the same as number 2. So now we can actually do the random number generating. So we can copy this line of code again and just change that to random pick 3, and then we can end our loop. So type loop. So by the time we get to where we are now, we will have 3 random numbers between 3 and whatever number of slides there are in your presentation, 22 in my case. And those 3 numbers will absolutely be different to each other. We'll have 3 unique numbers. So once we've done that, the next thing to do is to take our first random number, random pick 1, and say, okay, so what is that number? Let's go and let's say the number is 9. So let's go and find out what's on slide 9 and grab that picture, copy the format of that picture, and apply that format to big pick 1. And at the same time, also copy what's ever in the text box called text on slide 9 and copy that into the text box on slide 2. So that's basically what we're doing, and we're going to be doing that 3 times, of course, for these 3 images. So how do we do that? It's kind of combining, really, or in a way using what we have up here already for copying the format of our black square to our big pick 1, 2 and 3. So what we're going to do is write active presentation dot slides, and because we don't know which slide it is we're going to be looking at, it's whatever slide number is stored in random pick 1. So we'll just write that, random pick 1. Whatever number's in there, go to that slide, or at least look at that slide. And then we're going to type in shapes. And of course the picture on all of our other shapes, the picture here is always called pick. We did that because we made this slide and then duplicated it all the way down. So whatever slide we go to, this big picture is always called pick. Make sure that when you do this, you do just create one slide like that, name the big pick, pick, and the text, text. So if you do that and then duplicate this slide, then we know that it doesn't matter which slide we go to, the picture will always be called pick. So we've gone to whatever slide number it is and we've looked at pick. And then we can pick up the style, which will pick up the it'll pick up the side, the picture that's on it and the border as well. So we pick up the style from that picture, and then we're going to apply it to our first big pick. So presentation dot slides. This of course is slide 2 that we're applying this on, and the shape is going to be our big pick 1, and we're just going to apply that style to that picture. We'll do the same thing with the text, so we'll have a look at the text that's on that random pick 1 slide, whatever it is. So active presentation dot slides, and again this is random pick 1. By the way, you'll notice that there's no speech marks around this because this is a variable, a label. So the computer knows, because we created these labels up here, that this isn't a word like big pick 1, it's the label for a particular box that contains information. So random pick 1, oops, I've put a space in there, let's get rid of that. And this is going to be the text. In fact, actually, think about this, I've done this the wrong way round. My apologies. So this is actually going to do it a little bit of an easier way. Active presentation dot slides 2, let's have a look at that text box and just say this text box equals that text box, rather than copying and pasting the text. We'll just say this text box equals whatever's in that text box. It's not a format that we're picking up and applying, it's just this text equals that text. So in this case the shape is, we call this big text 1, I think. and we'll put speech marks around that because that isn't a variable, that's the name of an actual shape. And again, to get into the text box, we have to write .textFrame.textRange.text. I'm writing it out, but you'll see that I keep getting this little pop-up menu. You can just double click on that if you want to, rather than having to type it all out. And what does this text equals? Well, this equals what's on the slide that we've chosen randomly, which is active presentation dot slides. We don't know which one, but it's whichever one random pick one is chosen. And again, it's going to be the shapes called text. We call that one text. Every single one of our pictures, random pictures, has a text box underneath it called text. And again, it's the text frame. So .textFrame.textRange.text. That's it. So it's going to equal whatever is in the text of that text box. So press enter, and now we've got this block of 3 lines here for the first of our 3 pictures. So that will now turn this box here into whichever random picture we've chosen and put the text underneath it. We can copy that and simply change random pick 1 to random pick 2, big pick 1 to big pick 2, and big text 1 to big text 2. And we've got a random 1 over there. So wherever you see the number 1, we're just changing that to 2. And then in the third block here, we're changing all the 1s to 3s. So big pick 3, big text 3, and random pick 3, like that. Now, something that I explained earlier on and you saw in the demonstration is this delay. So we have our first picture, pause, then another picture, pause, and then the next picture, pause. And I quite like that. So I'm going to write a little block of code in a moment which will create that pause. And I'm going to call that block of code, or I will call that block of code in a moment, kill some time. So I haven't written that block of code yet, but I can still use the name for the moment. If I tried running this, the computer would throw a wobbly and say, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean by kill some time. But later on, when I've written the block of code called kill some time, it'll know what to do. So it'll do this first bit here. In fact, I can even put it in at the beginning as well. So we've got 3 black rectangles, pause, show the first picture, pause, show the next picture, pause, show the third picture. So we can do that. So I'll need to write this little block of code, and in fact I can do that now because we've finished this block of code called change pick. So we're now into the third block of code, and I promise you that this block of code is only about 6 lines long, and the final block of code is only 3 lines long. So we are getting there. We've done most of it now. So if you're still with me, congratulations, well done. As I say, if there's any problems or you think at this point, no, I just don't want to do this, then I will be showing you very shortly now how you can download this entire file and all the other files which I've got that are very similar to this as well. So I'll be showing you that shortly, but if you are still with me, well done. I hope that by doing this, you're kind of learning a little bit about this code and how this code works, and enough for you to be able to start changing and adapting it a little bit. So already hopefully you can see how you could change this to have 4 pictures or 5 pictures or 2 pictures. So let's see now how we can create the kill some time subroutine so we have a bit of a pause. So our kill some time subroutine now we need is going to start with sub as usual and then kill some time. Of course, you don't have to call it something quite as violent as that. You can call it pause or wait a moment or whatever you want to do, as long as whatever you call this subroutine is the same as what you use whenever you want to run that little block of code. So sub kill some time, we need a couple of variables again for this one. So we're going to have one variable called pause time. So this is simply going to be how long of a pause we want. So if you decide later on you want to change that, you want to make it last a little bit longer, you can do. We're also going to have a variable called start, so we know what time it is in terms of what time the computer thinks it is right now, and then we look at what time it is right now, and then we wait for as long as pause time says to wait. So what we're going to do is set pause time, and I've used 1 second, which is about right. So pause time equals 1. This is where you can change it. So if you decide to increase the length of your pause, just change that number. Change it to 2 or 3 or whatever you want. Now start, this variable we just used, is going to equal timer. Timer is something built in to PowerPoint, built into the code, and this will allow us to identify what time the computer is currently believing it to be. So now we're going to set up a loop. We're going to keep on doing something until whatever time it is now plus 1 is what time it now is, if you like. I really didn't explain that very well, did I? Sorry. Simple tech tutorials explained clearly, I think, is what I advertised. That was appalling. Let's write the code and work through it as we do. So we're going to do while the timer, the clock's computer, is less than whatever the start time was plus whatever our pause time is. So let's say, for example, that it is 12 o'clock midday, and we've said wait for 1 minute. That's a second, but let's, for example, call that a minute. So if the start time is recorded as whatever the clock says at the moment, let's say 12 o'clock midday, we're going to keep on twiddling our fingers and waiting here until the clock on the wall is, or keep on doing it, and while the clock on the wall is less than that 12 midday plus the 1 minute we said. So we'll be sitting there waiting until the clock on the wall is no longer less than our start time of 12 midday plus a minute. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Then what I'm going to do is write do events. Again, this is a built-in function that simply says, let everything carry on, don't freeze the computer while we're pausing, keep on looking at what else you need to be doing, and then we'll just write loop to end our loop, and that's it. So that little subroutine there now, whenever we use the word kills some time, it'll now pause for a second, but won't just freeze the computer. And we need just one final subroutine, and that's the subroutine which is going to kick everything off. So if you remember back on the title screen here, I could click anywhere on the title screen and that would trigger the game to begin. It would then send us to slide 2 and the game would begin. So when I went from slide 1 to slide 2, it knew to run the game, but then I had a big sort of button over the whole screen which I could click, and that would again make the game run. So how do we go from slide 1 to slide 2 and also change the game or make the game begin? Well, what I'm going to do is have another subroutine, very small subroutine this one. It's going to be called substart, and the first thing I'm going to do is write the word randomize. Now why? Two questions. One is, why does it have a Z? I'm in the UK, I'm English, and why do we need it? Well, the first thing is it has a Z because we use American spelling in coding. Don't blame me, I didn't invent that. Randomize then has to be spelled with a Z. The reason we have to have it is that computers are actually really bad at generating random numbers. When you think about it, they aren't creative or original or inventive. They can't really think for themselves, so they're just simply doing lots and lots of calculations. How do you get something that's basically like a calculator to do something random? Imagine your calculator at home just saying, give me a random number. It's kind of difficult. How does it do that? What is random? If you didn't have this word randomize here, what would happen is that the computer would use a pre-programmed list of pretend random numbers, which means every time you run the game, you're going to get the same sequence of apparently random numbers, which gets quite boring when you're seeing the same 3 pictures every time you run the program. Whereas if you put the word randomize in there, it pulls in a little library of code from somewhere else that makes sure that it's going to be different random numbers every time. So we need that one in. If you want to see what happens if you don't, then take that line out, run your program, close it, run it again, close it, run it again, and you'll see that every single time you're getting the same sequence of pictures or numbers. So pop in randomize there, and of course we need to go to the second slide because this will be used when we're on slide 1 or wherever you are. So slide windows, slideshow windows rather 1, which simply means they're active window. Dot view dot go to slide. Which slide? It's slide 2. And then we need to say, okay, do all this code up here that did all this random number stuff, which was called change pick. So I'm going to copy that, paste it down there, so I know I've got that right. And there we are. We've now done our code. So our code is complete. But there's one more thing we need to do, and that's just to add something that's a bit hidden inside our presentation. So let's now go and do that. We can close this window, so we can close this code window now. We don't need that anymore. So we close that, back to our presentation for the one final step. So what we need to do now is to add 2 secret buttons, one which covers the whole of our title slide, which allows the game to start, and one secret button that hides or covers the entire of slide 2 that allows us to click anywhere and generate 3 new pictures. So what I'm going to do on slide 1 is just simply go to Insert, Shapes, grab a rectangle, draw a rectangle out, and then snap that into the top left corner. I've got that snug into the top left corner like that, and then drag it out so it fills the whole slide. Now with this selected, on the right hand side you'll see that rectangle 2 is the one that's selected. I want to make absolutely sure it is definitely at the very top. You can obviously see it is in front of everything. You can right click on that and choose bring to front, or you can simply grab that and drag it up and down to make sure that it is at the top. That's really important. But with that at the top, we can now change the fill. So I've already made sure the outline has no outline, but I want to go to fill and choose no fill as well. So the rectangle is still there, it's just simply invisible, but it covers everything, so we can't click on anything else behind it now. With this rectangle still selected, I'm going to go to Insert and then choose Action. And here, if we go down to Run Macro, we choose that option, you can see a list of the 4 blocks of code or 4 subroutines that we wrote a little earlier on. So which one do I want to use? Well, on my title slide, I need to use the subroutine called Start. That's the one, if you remember, that generates random numbers, so makes sure that everything now is going to be random. It also takes us to slide 2, and that, of course, will trigger the subroutine that we said on slideshow page change, which means that the game is going to begin. So I'm going to click Start and then click OK. And having done that, I'm then going to go to slide 2 and do the same thing. So I'm going to draw another rectangle, get rid of the outline, push it up into the top left corner, drag that down to the bottom right corner, make sure again that it's on top of everything else, which it is, and then get rid of the fill. And then with it still selected, go to Insert, Action, and then in the Run macro, this time we're going to use the Change Pick subroutine. That's the one that will make sure that we change the pictures on these 3 blocks. There we are. So that's it. We've now created the slideshow itself. We've made sure that everything is named correctly. We've written all the code. So we're ready now to test this out. Now this, of course, hasn't got anything new on it. So I can keep all those images on there, but I will in a second show you an alternative version which does have this, has different images. So let's have a little look at testing this out. So to test this out, we can simply hit the F5 key to run our presentation. again is my delightful cheesy intro, and you'll see that the mouse has that little sort of gloved white hand. That's because that rectangle we just created is a big button. That's an invisible button that covers the whole of the screen. So when I click this, it's going to take us to slide 2 and randomly choose 3 images. And there we go. So we've got our 3 images like that with our text underneath it. And again, you'll see that my mouse, wherever I put it, is a hand, which means that I can click anywhere and choose 3 new images. There we go. Now, of course, I haven't put the sound in, which I had on the original one, but you could simply add the sound in easy enough. I can show you how to do that. But what I've also got, of course, we'll just do it one more time. There we are, 3 random numbers, which are turned into 3 random pictures. That's all working fine. But we can have a look at another example, and I'll also show you how you can download this. The sounds which are included, you'll see that that sound there, for example, is included. Simply an animation. I've just simply added that in. The animation that I've put in here, there it is at the top, simply plays that as soon as the slide loads. And you could very easily have the same animation on this slide as well if you want to. But the sounds that I've got are also royalty-free sounds. So the sounds, the images, everything here is royalty-free or Creative Commons, so that can be used. But let me just show you now a couple of things. First of all, I'll show you how you can download this entire file, or not this one, but the original hardware one I showed you that does have all the sounds built into it. Let's just save that. There we are. And this is what to do. So if you head over to patreon.com/thetechtrain and you subscribe to the Tech Train on patreon.com, then you will be able to have a number of benefits. So one of the benefits, for example, that you can have on the patreon.com, if you choose that membership, is to be able to see all the extra footage, the extended footage, behind the scenes, little extra tips on how to do things, like, for example, how to add the sound on that second slide. So that's one of the basic things you can have. Also, you can have full access to all the files that I use in my videos. So that will mean that anything you see me use, any PowerPoint documents, presentations, themes, sound, all that kind of stuff, you can download and have full access to. So that's something else that you can have. Additionally, you can also choose to opt in to having one-to-one support. So I know people a lot of the time do ask me questions in the comments below. And if it's a quick question, then I give you a quick answer. I do also get quite a few people every week emailing me with questions and advice, and on Facebook and what have you. Happy to help, but I'm moving that really over to Patreon so that I can give you a more dedicated amount of help. So if you want one-to-one advice or support, either with developing a resource or solving a problem that you have with a resource or document or something, then you can choose to opt into that on Patreon. And you can also choose to opt in to being able to request any custom videos you want. So if you want to see how to do something, you've not got something that needs fixing, you just don't have anything, and you want to be able to create a resource or document, you've got an idea of what it is you want to see, and you just want me to create a video which will show you from start to finish how to do that, as well, of course, as having the ability to download everything I create at the end of it, then you can also opt into that. So head over to patreon.com/thetechtrain and you can see there more details about what is available. Let me just show you another one of these PowerPoints that is available on Patreon if you want to download this one. This, as I said earlier on, is one that is not subject specific. I just cut myself off there, I think, but this one is not subject specific. So this could be used in any lesson, any subject at any time. And this is a random edition, and this one I've got 100 totally random images. So let's try this one. So we have mouse there just by chance. We happen to have an IT one, but this is totally general. So sunset, mouse and cake. Again, completely general. How on earth would students be able to identify which of those was the odd one out? I've done this with classes And I've had some students go for sunset and argue furiously about why that one is obviously the odd one out. Similarly, students that would argue mouse and students that would argue cake. I'm always going to argue for cake myself, of course. But it's quite interesting. It gets them to think in an analytical way, criticising and critiquing what they see, constructing arguments, having discussions and debates. Whether it be a quick filler that you want during form time or tutor time, a starter activity to get students to think creatively. There's another one. Oh, we've got mouse. We get 100 different images and we get mouse twice. What are the chances? Well, I guess 1 in 100. But there we are, getting 3 random images. So I've actually got several of those. I've got one for software, one for hardware. I've got about 6 of them in total. So those are available on patreon.com/thetechtrain. Of course, on YouTube itself, it will be fantastic if you could subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. I'm sure you have, and if you have, thank you so much. It really does make a difference. If you like the video, please do give it a like, and that would be wonderfully appreciated too. And any quick questions, please do leave a comment below. I know I'm not the fastest person in responding to comments generally. I try my best, but I am a teacher. I'm a full-time teacher at a high school in the UK, and naturally that does come with 1 or 2 things that take up my time. But I do my best, and I really genuinely appreciate the comments and support that I get from you. So thank you genuinely from the bottom of my heart for all that support. It is appreciated. So I hope that you enjoyed that video. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I hope to see you on patreon.com, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.